There is a loneliness that no one talks about. Not the kind that comes from being physically alone in a room, but something far deeper. A feeling that follows you even in crowds, even surrounded by people who say they love you, even in moments when you should feel connected. You have smiled while feeling invisible. You have laughed while something inside you ached. You have tried to explain what you feel to those closest to you, only to watch their eyes glaze over, only to hear them change the subject or offer advice that completely misses the point. And in those moments, a quiet voice inside you whispered that maybe something is wrong with you, that maybe you are too much, too different, too intense for this world. You have wondered why connection feels so difficult when it seems to come so naturally to everyone else. You have questioned whether this path you are walking, this pull you feel towards something greater, is a gift or a curse. But what if I told you that this loneliness is not a sign that you are broken? What if the very isolation you feel is evidence of something profound awakening within you? What if walking alone is not your punishment, but your preparation? Rudolf Steiner understood this deeply, and what he revealed about the soul that walks a solitary path may finally help you understand why you have always felt this way. Steiner spoke of something he called the path of spiritual development, and he was remarkably clear about one thing that most people do not want to hear. The soul that begins to awaken, the soul that starts to sense realities beyond the physical world, the soul that feels called to something higher, that soul will inevitably experience a profound separation from the world around it. This is not a failure of the spiritual path. This is the spiritual path. The loneliness you feel is not something that happens despite your awakening. It happens because of it. When you begin to see what others cannot see, when you begin to feel what others have numbed themselves to, when you begin to question what everyone else accepts without thought, you step into a different current of existence, and that current, by its very nature, pulls you away from the shore where most people have chosen to remain. Think about what happens when someone begins to wake up in a world that is still asleep. Imagine being the only person in a room full of dreamers who suddenly realizes that none of this is quite real, that there is something beyond the walls of this room, beyond the stories everyone keeps telling themselves, beyond the endless cycle of wanting and getting and wanting again. At first, you might try to wake the others. You might shake them gently and say, look at what I am seeing, look at what is possible. But they do not wake. They roll over and pull the blankets tighter. They mumble something about being realistic, about not getting carried away, about focusing on what matters. And slowly, painfully, you realize that you cannot make someone see what they are not ready to see. You cannot force awakening upon another soul. Each being must come to consciousness in their own time, through their own struggles, through their own dark nights. And so you find yourself awake in a sleeping world, and the loneliness of that position is almost unbearable. Steiner taught that human beings are not simply physical creatures living physical lives. We are spiritual beings who have descended into matter for a purpose. We carry within us multiple bodies, multiple layers of existence. There is the physical body that everyone can see and touch. But there is also the etheric body, the life force that animates us and connects us to the living world. There is the astral body, the seat of our emotions and desires and dreams. And there is the ego, the I, the divine spark of individual consciousness that makes you uniquely you across all your lifetimes. Most people live almost entirely in the physical and lower astral realms. They are consumed by material concerns, by physical pleasures and pains, by emotional reactions that come and go like weather. They have not yet discovered the deeper dimensions of their own being. But the chosen soul, the awakening soul, begins to sense these other layers. The etheric world starts to reveal itself in moments of quiet. The higher astral realms begin to open during meditation or in those strange twilight moments between sleeping and waking. And the ego, the true self, begins to assert its presence more strongly, demanding authenticity, demanding truth, refusing to be satisfied with the shallow answers that satisfy everyone else. When this awakening begins, something inevitable happens. The things that once brought you joy no longer satisfy you. The conversations that once engaged you now feel empty. The goals that once motivated you now seem meaningless. You look at your old life, your old self, and you barely recognize it. You wonder how you ever cared so much about things that now seem so trivial. And the people around you, the people who knew the old you, they notice the change. They feel you pulling away, even if you are still physically present. They sense that you are no longer fully in their world, and this frightens them. Some will try to pull you back. They will remind you of who you used to be, what you used to want, how you used to behave. They will tell you that you are changing, and they will not mean it as a compliment. Others will simply drift away, confused by this new version of you that they cannot understand, and you will find yourself increasingly alone, not because you have rejected anyone, but because the frequency at which you now vibrate no longer matches the frequency of your old life. This is what Steiner called the isolation of the path, and he considered it absolutely necessary for genuine spiritual development. You see, as long as you are completely embedded in the collective consciousness of humanity, as long as you think what everyone thinks, feel what everyone feels, want what everyone wants, you cannot truly know yourself. You are simply a reflection of the masses, an echo of the culture, a product of your conditioning. To discover who you truly are, the eternal being that has journeyed through countless lifetimes, you must step back from the crowd. You must find the courage to stand alone. You must be willing to question everything you have been taught, everything you have believed, everything that everyone around you holds as obviously true. And this questioning, this stepping back, this willingness to see with your own eyes rather than through the lens of collective assumption, this is what creates the loneliness. But it is also what creates the freedom. It is also what creates the possibility of genuine spiritual sight. I want you to pause here for a moment and really feel what I am saying. Have you experienced this in your own life? Have you felt the pain of outgrowing relationships that once meant everything to you? Have you watched friendships fade because you could no longer pretend to care about things that no longer touched your soul? Have you sat at family gatherings feeling like an alien, smiling and nodding while inside you ached to talk about something real, something true, something that actually mattered? If you have felt this, if you are feeling it right now, I want you to know that you are not alone in your aloneness. There are others walking this path, others who understand exactly what you are going through. And if this message is reaching you, if these words are resonating in your heart, I want to ask you to do something simple. Leave a comment below with the words "I understand now" so that others who feel alone in their journey can see your comment and know that they are not the only ones. Sometimes the greatest gift we can give each other is simply the knowledge that someone else understands. Steiner spoke extensively about the concept of karma and reincarnation, and understanding these ideas can bring tremendous comfort to the soul that walks alone. You see, you did not arrive in this lifetime by accident. The circumstances of your birth, the family you were born into, the challenges you have faced, even this loneliness you feel, none of it is random. Before you incarnated into this body, while you were still in the spiritual worlds between lives, you looked down at the tapestry of earthly existence and you chose this particular thread. You chose these particular challenges because your soul knew they were exactly what you needed for your continued evolution. And if you chose a path of awakening, if you chose to be among those who would begin to see beyond the veil in this lifetime, then you also chose the loneliness that comes with it. Not as punishment, but as preparation. Not as suffering for its own sake, but as the necessary condition for the growth your soul is seeking. Think of it this way. A seed must be buried in darkness before it can grow toward the light. It must be separated from everything familiar, enclosed in the cold earth, cut off from the world above. If the seed could feel, it would feel terribly alone. It would wonder why it was abandoned in this dark place. It would not understand that the darkness is not its grave but its womb. The isolation is not its ending but its beginning. Everything the seed will become, the roots it will grow, the stem it will push upward, the leaves it will unfold, the flowers it will bloom, all of this is being prepared in the darkness. All of this requires the separation from everything the seed once knew. And so it is with the awakening soul. The loneliness you feel is the darkness of the soil. It feels like death, but it is actually the beginning of a new life. Something is being prepared within you that could not be prepared any other way. Something is growing in the silence and solitude that could not grow in the noise and distraction of constant company. Steiner also taught about beings he called the hierarchies, the spiritual entities that exist in realms above the human. Angels, archangels, and beings higher still, all working together in the vast cosmic plan of evolution. And he said something remarkable about the relationship between these beings and the awakening human. When a soul begins to develop spiritually, when it starts to purify its astral body and strengthen its ego, it becomes visible to these higher beings in a new way. It begins to attract their attention, their guidance, their support. But here is what most people do not understand. These higher beings cannot reach you easily when you are completely immersed in the noise of ordinary human life. They cannot speak to you when your inner world is constantly filled with chatter, with distraction, with the endless concerns of physical existence. They need silence to reach you. They need stillness. They need you to step back from the crowd, to create space within yourself, to become quiet enough to hear their whisper. The loneliness of the spiritual path is not just a byproduct of awakening. It is a prerequisite for receiving the guidance that will carry you further. Have you ever noticed that your deepest insights come in moments of solitude? Have you ever experienced a sudden knowing, a flash of understanding, a moment of clarity that seemed to come from nowhere and everywhere at once? These moments rarely happen at parties. They rarely happen when you are surrounded by people talking about ordinary things. They happen when you are alone with yourself, when you have quieted the mind, when you have created the inner conditions for something higher to break through. The spiritual world is always speaking, but we can only hear it when we are quiet enough to listen. And the soul that walks alone has far more opportunity to be quiet than the soul that is constantly surrounded by others. But let me be clear about something important, because this teaching can be misunderstood. When Steiner spoke about the isolation of the spiritual path, he was not advocating for coldness or misanthropy. He was not saying that the awakening soul should reject humanity or look down upon those who are still asleep. Quite the opposite. The chosen soul walks alone not because it has stopped loving others, but because it is learning to love in a higher way. The loneliness is temporary. The separation is a phase. The soul withdraws from ordinary human connection for a time so that it can develop the capacity for a much deeper connection later. Think of the caterpillar that enters the cocoon. It separates itself from the world, dissolves its old form, and undergoes a radical transformation in isolation. But it does not stay in the cocoon forever. Eventually it emerges as something new, something with wings, something capable of existing in an entirely different way. And when it emerges, it does not reject the world. It engages with the world from an entirely new level of being. This is the promise for the soul that endures the loneliness of the path. You are not being isolated forever. You are being transformed. And when the transformation is complete, or at least when it has progressed far enough, you will return to human connection in a new way. You will be able to be with others without losing yourself. You will be able to love without attachment. You will be able to give without depleting yourself. You will be able to see the divine spark in every human being, even those who are still fast asleep, and you will love that spark with a love that transcends personal preference and emotional need. This is what Steiner called conscious love, and it is one of the fruits of spiritual development. But it cannot be rushed. It cannot be forced. It can only emerge from the chrysalis of solitude. There is another dimension to this teaching that I want to explore with you, because it touches on something very deep. Steiner taught that every human being is on a journey of individuation, a journey toward becoming a fully realized individual ego. In the distant past of human evolution, we were much more connected to the group soul of humanity. We thought collective thoughts, felt collective feelings, acted according to collective instincts. There was very little individual consciousness as we know it today. But over vast epochs of time, the human being has been gradually separating from this collective consciousness, gradually developing the capacity to think its own thoughts, feel its own feelings, make its own choices. This is the evolution of the ego, and it is still ongoing. Each of us is learning to stand as a unique individual, a free being capable of determining our own destiny. And this process of individuation inevitably involves loneliness. You cannot become a true individual while remaining merged with the collective. You cannot discover your unique essence while constantly conforming to what others expect. The separation must happen. The aloneness must be experienced. This is not a flaw in the design. This is the design. But here is where the teaching becomes even more profound. Steiner said that this process of individuation, this development of the individual ego, is not the end of the journey. It is the middle. In the far future of human evolution, we will come back together again, but this time as fully conscious individuals choosing to unite freely rather than as unconscious members of a collective who have no choice. The loneliness is temporary on a cosmic scale. We are passing through a necessary phase of separation so that we can eventually experience a reunion that is far more beautiful than anything that came before. Imagine a love between two beings who are completely whole within themselves, who need nothing from each other, who choose to be together purely out of free will and conscious appreciation. This is incomparably more valuable than the love between two beings who are merged together unconsciously, who cannot exist without each other, who are bound by need rather than choice. The cosmos is preparing us for this higher form of union, and the preparation requires that we first learn to stand alone. If you are still watching this video, if these words are still resonating within you, then I want to speak to you directly for a moment. I know how hard this is. I know how much you have wanted to belong, to fit in, to feel normal. I know how many times you have wished you could just turn off this awareness, Go back to sleep, be satisfied with the things that satisfy everyone else. I know the tears you have cried in private, the prayers you have whispered in the dark, the desperate longing for someone, anyone, who truly understands. And I want you to know that your pain is not wasted, your loneliness is not meaningless. Every moment of isolation you have endured has been preparing you for something magnificent. You are being forged in a fire that most people never even approach. And when you emerge from this fire, you will carry a light that the world desperately needs. Steiner often spoke about the responsibilities that come with spiritual awakening. The soul that develops higher capacities does not do so merely for its own benefit. It does so for the benefit of all humanity. When you awaken, you become a channel through which higher forces can flow into the earthly realm. You become a bridge between the spiritual and the physical. You become a beacon for others who are beginning to stir from their sleep. This is why the chosen soul walks alone. Not because it is unloved by the cosmos, but because it is being prepared for a mission of love that far exceeds ordinary human relationships. You are not being punished with loneliness. You are being entrusted with it. You are being asked to endure something difficult so that you can eventually offer something invaluable. There is a beautiful image that Steiner used to describe the human being who has developed spiritually. He called such a person a free spirit, a being who acts not out of external compulsion or social pressure or biological instinct, but out of moral intuition, out of direct perception of what is right and good in each unique situation. The free spirit is not bound by rules that others have created. The free spirit does not need to be told how to behave. The free spirit perceives the good directly and acts accordingly, spontaneously, joyfully, without internal conflict or hesitation. But becoming a free spirit requires tremendous inner work. It requires purifying the astral body of its selfish desires and fears. It requires strengthening the ego until it can stand firm in its own truth regardless of external pressure. It requires developing what Steiner called the consciousness soul, the capacity to experience truth directly rather than accepting it secondhand from others. And all of this work, all of this development, is done in the solitude of the inner life. Others cannot do it for you. Teachers can point the way, but you must walk the path yourself, and much of that walking is done alone. Let me share with you one of Steiner's most important insights about the spiritual path. He said that the seeker must learn to develop absolute positivity, the ability to see the good in everything, the hidden blessing in every challenge, the potential for growth in every apparent setback. This is not naive optimism. This is not pretending that everything is fine when it clearly is not. This is a much deeper capacity, the ability to perceive the wisdom of the cosmos even in circumstances that seem random or cruel. And nowhere is this capacity more tested than in the loneliness of the path. Can you find the good in your isolation? Can you perceive the hidden gift in your solitude? Can you trust that the very thing causing you so much pain is also preparing you for something wonderful? This is the test. This is the challenge. And those who pass this test, those who develop genuine positivity even in the depths of loneliness, they become capable of things that ordinary humans cannot even imagine. I want to speak now about something that Steiner called the meeting with the guardian of the threshold. In the esoteric tradition, the guardian is a being that every soul must face before it can enter truly into the spiritual worlds. The guardian shows you yourself, not the idealized version you present to the world, but the complete truth of who you are, including all the parts you have hidden, denied, and rejected. Facing the guardian is terrifying because it forces you to see your own shadow, your own darkness, your own failures and weaknesses without any filters or defenses. But this meeting is necessary because you cannot enter the spiritual worlds carrying unconscious baggage. You cannot bring your self-deceptions into the realm of truth. Everything must be made conscious. Everything must be accepted and integrated. And this process of facing yourself, really facing yourself, is something that can only be done alone. No one can do it for you. No one can even accompany you. When you stand before the guardian, you stand alone. And many of the experiences of loneliness on the spiritual path are preparations for this ultimate encounter. Each time you sit with your solitude, each time you face your own thoughts and feelings without distraction, you are practicing for the moment when you will face the guardian. You are building the strength and courage you will need. Steiner also taught that there are beings who do not want humanity to awaken. He called them by various names, Lucifer and Ahriman being the most well-known, and he described their influences in great detail. These beings work to keep humanity asleep, distracted, cut off from spiritual reality. And one of their most effective tools is the fear of loneliness. They whisper to you that you will be abandoned if you pursue the spiritual path. They show you visions of isolation and rejection. They amplify every fear you have about being alone. Why? Because they know that the awakening soul must pass through loneliness to reach its destination, and if they can make you afraid enough of that loneliness, you will turn back. You will give up your quest. You will return to the comfortable sleep of ordinary life rather than face the solitude of awakening. When you understand this, when you see the fear of loneliness as a tactic used by beings who want to keep you small, something shifts. You realize that your courage to be alone is an act of spiritual rebellion. Every time you choose the path despite its loneliness, you defeat these opposing forces. Every time you embrace solitude rather than running from it, you move closer to your true destiny. The spiritual history of humanity is full of individuals who walked alone. The great teachers, the prophets, the saints, the mystics, all of them experienced profound isolation at some point in their journey. Buddha left his family and his kingdom to sit alone under a tree. Jesus spent 40 days alone in the desert. Moses wandered alone on the mountain. The mystics of every tradition speak of the dark night of the soul, that period of apparent abandonment when even the presence of the divine seems to withdraw. This is not coincidence. This is pattern. This is the nature of the path itself. To receive higher knowledge, you must be willing to stand apart from those who do not seek it. To hear the voice of spirit, you must be willing to leave the noise of the crowd. To become a vessel for divine love, you must first empty yourself of the need for human approval and acceptance. The chosen soul walks alone because alone is where the choosing happens. Alone is where you decide, again and again, to continue on the path despite every obstacle. Alone is where your commitment is tested and proven true. If you have made it this far in this video, I want to acknowledge something about you. You are not here by accident. You did not click on this video randomly. Something in you recognized something in the title, in the thumbnail, in the essence of what was being offered. That recognition is itself a sign of your awakening. The sleeping soul does not search for videos about why it walks alone. The sleeping soul does not resonate with teachings about spiritual development. The very fact that you are here, listening, feeling, understanding, this tells me something about who you are and where you are on your path. And I want to support you in this journey. If this content is speaking to you, if it is helping you understand your experience, if it is giving you hope and context and meaning, I invite you to subscribe to this channel and click the notification bell so that you will know when new teachings are shared. This is not about numbers or algorithms. This is about creating a community of awakening souls. People who understand what it means to walk alone, people who can encourage each other even from a distance, people who carry the flame of spiritual seeking in a world that often feels very dark. If you feel called to be part of this community, I welcome you with all my heart. Let me return now to the deeper teaching, because there is more to understand. Steiner spoke about the development of what he called higher sense organs, spiritual organs of perception that allow the awakened soul to directly perceive realities that are invisible to ordinary consciousness. These organs are developed through specific practices, through meditation, through concentration exercises, through the cultivation of certain soul qualities. But they can only develop in a soul that has achieved a degree of inner independence. As long as you are completely dependent on others for your sense of self, as long as you cannot be content without external validation, as long as you need constant social interaction to feel okay, the higher organs cannot form properly. They require a stable inner ground, a center of gravity within yourself, a capacity to stand firm in your own being regardless of external circumstances. The loneliness of the path is part of how this inner stability is developed. Each time you endure solitude without collapsing, you strengthen your inner core. Each time you face yourself without running to others for distraction, you build the foundation upon which the higher organs can be constructed. There is a paradox here that is worth contemplating. The soul that can truly be alone is also the soul that can truly be with others. As long as you need people, you cannot fully love them. Your need colors everything, distorts everything, demands things that love does not demand. But when you have developed the capacity to be complete within yourself, when you no longer need others to fill a void, then you can offer them something pure. You can see them as they truly are rather than as instruments for your own satisfaction. You can love them for their own sake rather than for what they give you. This is why the path leads through loneliness to connection, not away from connection. The isolation is the purification that makes genuine connection possible. The solitude is the preparation for a love that most people never experience because they never develop the capacity for it. Steiner taught that in the future, humanity will develop new faculties that will allow us to perceive each other's souls directly. We will not need words or gestures or facial expressions to communicate. We will see into each other with perfect clarity, understanding thoughts and feelings and intentions without any possibility of deception or misunderstanding. When this capacity develops, the loneliness we now experience will become impossible. We will live in a state of constant intimate connection with all beings. But this future can only come if we do the work now, in this age of isolation and separation, to develop the necessary inner qualities. Every awakening soul who learns to stand alone, who develops inner stability and purity, who cultivates the capacity for genuine love, is contributing to this future. You are not just doing this for yourself, you are doing it for all humanity, for all beings, for the cosmos itself. I want to share something personal with you now, because I believe it will help you trust this teaching. I have walked this path. I have felt the loneliness you feel. There were times when I wondered if I was losing my mind, times when the isolation seemed unbearable, times when I wanted to give up everything spiritual and just be normal, just fit in, just stop feeling so different. But I could not go back. Once you have seen, you cannot unsee. Once you have awakened, you cannot return to sleep. And so I kept walking, kept enduring, kept trusting that there was meaning in the difficulty. And slowly, gradually, something began to shift. The loneliness did not disappear entirely, but it transformed. It became a companion rather than an enemy. It became a sacred space rather than an empty void. I began to feel presences in the silence, guidance in the solitude, a love that did not come from any human being but that was more real and more sustaining than anything I had ever experienced. This is what awaits you if you persist. Not the end of loneliness, but its transfiguration. Not escape from solitude, but the discovery of what solitude truly contains. Steiner taught that the human being is a microcosm of the entire universe. Everything that exists in the vast cosmos also exists within you in miniature. The stars are within you. The hierarchies are within you. The entire spiritual world is within you, waiting to be discovered. When you are alone, you are not really alone. You are with yourself, and yourself contains multitudes. The feeling of emptiness that comes with loneliness is actually an illusion created by looking outward for what can only be found within. When you turn your attention inward, when you begin to explore the inner cosmos with the same curiosity and wonder with which scientists explore the outer cosmos, you discover that you have never been alone for a single moment. You have been surrounded by beings and presences and realities that you simply could not perceive because you were always looking in the wrong direction. The spiritual path is largely a matter of learning to look within. And the loneliness of the path is what finally convinces us to stop looking without. As we near the end of our time together, I want to leave you with some practical thoughts about how to work with the loneliness you experience. First, stop fighting it. Stop treating loneliness as a problem to be solved or an enemy to be defeated. Start treating it as a teacher, perhaps your most important teacher. Ask it what it has to show you. Sit with it consciously rather than trying to escape through distraction or numbing. The more you resist loneliness, the more painful it becomes. The more you accept it, even welcome it, the more it transforms. Second, use your solitude for inner work. Meditate, contemplate, study spiritual texts, write in a journal, engage in artistic creation. Do the practices that develop the higher organs of perception. Your loneliness has given you a gift that most people do not have, time and space for genuine spiritual practice. Do not waste this gift. Third, remember that you are part of a vast community of awakening souls, even if you never meet them in physical form. Across the world, across time, there are beings who understand your experience, who have walked the path you are walking, who are cheering you on from dimensions you cannot yet perceive. You are connected to them in spirit even if you are alone in body. And finally, trust the process. Trust that the loneliness has a purpose. Trust that you are being prepared for something. Trust that the cosmos is intelligent and loving and would not put you through this difficulty without a very good reason. The chosen soul always walks alone. This is not a curse. This is a calling. You have been chosen not because you are better than others, but because you are ready for something that others are not yet ready for. You have been chosen because your soul has grown through enough lifetimes to be capable of enduring this particular initiation. You have been chosen because you have the strength, whether you feel it or not, to walk a path that would break lesser souls. And in walking this path, in enduring its loneliness, in transforming its isolation into illumination, you serve not only yourself but all of humanity. You are a pioneer of consciousness, exploring territories that future generations will inhabit. You are a torchbearer, carrying light into darkness so that others can follow. You are a seed, buried in the soil of solitude, growing toward a flowering that you cannot yet imagine. Trust yourself, trust the path. Trust the loneliness that is preparing you for everything your soul has ever longed for. And when the loneliness feels unbearable, when you are tempted to give up, when you wonder if any of this is real or if you are simply fooling yourself, remember this. You found this video. These words reached you. Something in you recognized something in them. That recognition is real. That resonance is true. You are not imagining your awakening. You are not making up your path. You are one of the chosen souls, walking alone for now, but walking toward a destination more beautiful than anything you can currently conceive. Keep walking, keep trusting, keep becoming who you really are. The loneliness will not last forever, but the being you are becoming in its fire will last for eternity.